Okay, testing, testing. Welcome to another Wednesday Night Live. So today we're going to get into, or I'm going to get into, I always say we like I got a mouse in my pocket. The three of the more prominent defectors of the Soviet Union. I talked to you a lot about how ideological subversion works, about how even Generation X and even the boomers were actually the first ones to be subverted. That it's real and that people need to understand it. Because a lot of times people will say, I don't know how we got to this point. How did this all go so crazy? And it all went so crazy because we've been at war for some 50 to 60 years and we're only becoming aware of it in 2020. And in order to understand the concept, you've got to first admit the fact that it happened. And today's world, it plays out even crazier because of the internet and the ability to get things out so fast and the ability to get fake news and fake stories out so fast. But every nation is doing it now. It used to be just the Soviets, and the Chinese, the CCP, are absolutely the most prominent players. But the Soviets are still digging in deep. But as far as infiltration is concerned, the Chinese are even ahead of the Soviets. I don't care who says what, with their Confucius Institutes, which are just starting to shut down. But they've been in play for decades, and they've been infected. If you wonder how our universities got so poisoned, if you wonder why college students walk out believing Marxism has never really been tried, and now walking out believing things like men can have babies, if you understand the idea and the point behind it all. And if you missed the clips in the ticker, don't worry about it. I'm going to play them all here. One from Alexandr Solzhenitsyn, one from Ayn Rand, and then another from Yuri. Actually, two from Yuri. To just let that sink in, because after this broadcast, I'm going to be cutting off that ticker and putting it out separately as a video, which was my original intention, but I decided to use it as the intro because of the topic. So, but I will be playing those clips throughout. And then I'm also going to be discussing Alex Jones, who I sat through, I guess they call it Space. I'm still a rookie on X, guys. But if you're on X, come follow me, man. I'm trying to grow a following there, and I don't even know where to get started. So I'm sitting here with 18,000 followers on Facebook, another 600 or so on Rumble, and then there's like 1,400 on YouTube. But I'm at like 44 on X now. Truth be told, I've only started posting there recently, and I really have ignored that account for a very long time. But I'm trying to get back into it because I'm starting to become still skeptical as always, but I'm starting to become an Elon Musk fan after listening to some of his recent comments about how he views free speech. And I always knew he made those comments, but when I heard him tell advertisers to F off, I just loved it because it just tells me that he didn't really buy Twitter to make this huge sum of money. He bought Twitter to just for the sake of having a free speech mechanism on social media. And whether if he breaks even, that's fine for him, right? And there's no investors to worry about there, so he's doing well. I actually started paying for it more so just to support him. I don't think I'm getting any benefit right now from the blue check, but I did it more just to support and kind of show that social media can exist at a pay for model because look, either you're buying a product or you are the product. And I would much rather buy the product. So since I'm going to be on there, I decided to go ahead and support it and support that model because I think, if we support private companies running models like that and we pay the $5 a month, give up a cup of coffee to not have data collection go crazy on you, right? So, and to be able to speak freely whenever you want. So I thought that was good. But let's get into these defectors. So the first one I'm going to bring up is Alexandr Solzhenitsyn. So Alexandr Solzhenitsyn, if you're not aware of who he is, if it's the first time you're hearing that name, what I want to show you is a quote from him that you may or may not be aware of, where he calls out social justice by name. Now, to give you context for where this quote came from, it is from a speech he gave in 1975. He was an author in the Soviet Union. He was eventually put in the gulags spent years in the gulags, mostly for speech, right? Speech related stuff, authoring material they did not care for. The Marxist regime didn't care for. And so he spent years in the gulags. And when eventually he came out, and he never really hated Russia. He didn't really walk away from this with I hate. He was still his country. He hated the Soviets, right? So eventually he ends up getting exiled, all right? And he comes to the United States. And the first speech that he gave after being exiled and coming to the United States was they were union organizations, right? Because obviously labor was a big thing in the Soviet Union. He went and gave a speech to our labor unions, which at the time were not nearly as perverse as they are today. Still crooked, but crooked in a money gathering way, not in a political way. And he gave this speech to them. And at the end of the speech, and you can purchase this, I don't know if when I looked for it back when, this was maybe a couple years ago, I wasn't able to find an e-version of it. I had to buy the hard copy, but it wasn't expensive. The speech itself is about 50 pages long. There's another speech I believe he gave to the UK that was very similar. But in this speech, it's called A Warning to the West. And he breaks down at the end of the speech, he basically warns us about what's to come, how they're going to try and take us down, because the Soviets, of course, realized that military would be a non-option and they'd never be able to win a war against the United States for the simple, if for no other reason, funding. They just wouldn't be able to fund it. And of course, we all know now, eventually Ronald Reagan took them down by holding this nuclear arms race, which they just simply collapsed economically trying to keep up with. So But Alexandr Solzhenitsyn called the key part I took out of his speech, and I tried to pick a key quote from each one of these guys and girls from Ayn Rand's perspective. But I tried to pick the quote in there after watching the interviews, and I know the speech already, that was relevant, that I thought was significant. And the voiceover is just a voiceover. It's not actually Solzhenitsyn speaking. However, these are very much his words. And I want to go ahead and play that for you. So I'm going to start off with Solzhenitsyn, and then we will go from there.
I would like to call upon America to be more careful with its trust and prevent those wise persons who are attempting to establish even finer degrees of justice and even finer legal shades of equality. Some because of their distorted outlook, some because of their short-sightedness, and still others out of self-interest, from falsely using the struggle for peace and social justice to lead you down a false road. Because they are trying to weaken you. They are trying to disarm your strong and magnificent country in the face of this fearful threat, one that has never been seen before in the history of the world.
So it's obvious that Solzhenitsyn understands the levity of the threat. But because the threat was in such an early stage, and no one had really linked the fact that the hippie generation had just come up and were so anti-America and were coming up with all of this, America's the problem, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but even today more than ever, I think, everything in my Instagram feed, everything is just all young people with these bizarre notions, just bashing America for everything. And it's just, I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it. And I'm trying, and I know that in the end, we're going to win. I know that in the end, patriotism will reign supreme and the Constitution will prevail. But just watching the brainwashing take place, it really does get under my skin. I ain't going to lie. It really does. The fact that these kids have no idea what American history is and only know it. I mean, these kids are walking around. Some of them think the Revolutionary War was fought for slavery. Like, you can't cure that. You can't. I don't know how that could be cured. They think they know better. They think everyone else was taught bad history, but now they got the real stuff. It just drives me insane. But you listen to Solzhenitsyn particularly point out, saying, don't let be careful about people with trust, right? Be careful who you trust. And beware of people who are looking for finer shades, of equality, or people who are using the struggle for peace and social justice because they're using it to try and destroy your country. He's telling us outright in that quote that they're and we all look. Social justice is like it's an everyday word now. That it wasn't. There was nothing organic about that terminology. That terminology, or equity, or any of it. That is all. That is all attempts at programming. That is all psychological warfare. And as early as 1975, Solzhenitsyn is telling us, "Hey, this is where you're headed." Right? If you follow the social justice path, this is where they're leading you. And he knew, right? He knew. He spent time in the gulags. He watched the Soviet Union come to be. He lived through the Lenin era. He lived to see Stalin take it over. He watched this poison infect his mother country and was disgusted by it. And it's always the person, and it's going to bring. I'm going to bring into Ayn Rand next. But like all three of these people have one thing in common. They all despise Marxism. Why? Not because they learned to in some class, not because some patriot taught them the wrong history, because they lived through it. And the one group of people, and it's not a race, the one group of people that will unify 100% against Marxism is everyone who lived under it. Everyone. There's almost no exception unless they're still in there, right? Unless they're still in there because they found themselves a high position and they think that that's going to last. And they think that they can't get thrown away at the next political wind change and when eventually they do. But most want to defect, and most that do tell the same story. They come here and they see the seeds were planted. They see where it's headed, and it freaks them out because one thing they understand more than anything else is that, as Yuri Bezmenov says in the interview that I clipped, we're the last great hope. After the United States, if the United States falls, he said, unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect to. There's no more important cog in this Marxist globalist wheel than the United States. So goes the United States, so will go the world. And if we allow Marxism to really take hold further than what it is, and do not continue to fight the way we fight, and be present and vote properly, and I understand the election thing, but vote properly and enact something like Article 5, call this convention, strip power from the federal government, take the House back. Our house. If we don't do those things, the whole world falls. Right? If the UK falls, God forbid, and they're a little deeper in than we are, that's horrific, but that's not going to drag us. That's not going to be the reason we fall. We could still stand and rebel without Europe. We have everything we need to do that. We have all the resources. We don't have the leadership right now, but we have all the resources. We have everything we need. We have the constitutional structure. Our constitutional republic is more than equipped to fight off Marxism, so long as we continue that fight. So the next one up in the ranks here is Ayn Rand. So if you have not read Atlas Shrugged, that's the book that she is most famous for. Okay, she started her own philosophy of objectivism. I don't really go down that path, but in the end, I don't do the whole I follow this philosophy thing. But Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged was prophetic in nature. It absolutely, in the mid-50s, she writes this book of fiction, which is based on what would happen, is basically what the book is asking. What would happen if all of these makers, right, all of these titans, if you will, what would happen if they all just decided to say, screw it, and walked away and left it to the so-called workers who are so paramount, right? Who are the ones that make it happen. And I'm not saying the workers aren't important, but without these titans, their ideas and their innovations and the risks that they take, there's nothing to work. There is no work to be had. And her book was basically about that, about what would happen if all of these people just said, you know what, you think I'm the devil? You think I'm the worst thing in the world? I'm leaving. And they left. The most successful miner of iron ore and steel left. The biggest oil producer left. The greatest mathematicians left. All these people who were, the titans of finance left. Like everybody just took off. And in the book, you slowly see the nation start to crumble to pieces on its own weight. And the idea of the book was to show the example that as much as we may hate this billionaire or that billionaire or whatever, don't hate them for their money. Like, they've earned their money. Say, no one can earn billions of dollars. Yes, someone can. If you completely revolutionize the way people live, you can. And that's the beauty of the country, not the problem with it. And she highlights it incredibly well in this book. If you have not read it, I highly recommend that you do. But she was being questioned by Mike Wallace. This interview was done in the 50s. As she was being questioned, Mike Wallace is painting this picture as if, everything, all this legislation coming out in the 50s for the public welfare was all good. And she's standing there at the time, incredibly unpopular, saying, no, it's not. No, it's not good. And points out to him. She has to point out to him how the nation is supposed to work. Like how in accordance with the way his philosophy comes off, it's that, hey, people voted for this. And she's like, I don't care what people voted for. You can't vote to take people. You don't vote on everything in this system. You vote on political issues. You vote on for elected officials, really, and that's it. You don't get to vote on you don't get to vote someone else's freedom away. You don't get to vote someone else's property away. Like, those are not things that are up for vote. And it's a shame that she had to school Mike Wallace on this, but she did. So listen to her.
Now, one of the principal achievements of this country in the past 20 years particularly, I think most people agree, is the gradual growth of social protective legislation based on the principle that we are our brother's keepers. How do you feel about the political trends of the United States, the Western world?
The way everybody feels, except more consciously. I feel that it is terrible, that you see destruction all around you, and that you are moving toward disaster until and unless all those welfare state conceptions have been reversed and rejected. It is precisely these trends which are bringing the world to disaster, because we are now moving towards complete collectivism or socialism, a system under which everybody is enslaved to everybody. And we are moving that way only because of our altruist morality.
Ah, yes, but you say everybody is enslaved to everybody, yet this came about democratically, and free people in a free country voted for this kind of government, wanted this kind of legislation. Do you object to the democratic process?
I object to the idea that people have the right to vote on everything. The traditional American system was a system based on the idea that majority will prevailed only in public or political affairs, and that it was limited by inalienable individual rights. Therefore, I do not believe that a majority can vote a man's life or property or freedom away from him. Therefore, I do not believe that if a majority votes on any issue, that this makes the issue right. It doesn't.
Exactly. It doesn't. And the fact that we needed a Soviet defector to the U.S. to teach us that, someone that wasn't even born here, to teach us about our own government. And we didn't listen, by the way, right? We all know now, looking back, nobody listened. The government continued to grow. More and more entitlements had come out since. Billions, trillions of dollars since this what was it? Lyndon Johnson's, I don't know why it's escaping me, but his Great Society or whatever. This is what caused the problem. And the fact of the matter is none of us listened. And throughout the era, right? She's saying this in the 50s. Solzhenitsyn's warning us in the 70s. Yuri Bezmenov comes along in the 80s, and they get no airtime, they get no play, because at that time and elsewhere in Yuri's speech, and you can get Yuri's full, Solzhenitsyn's a little harder to get. You'll have to come back to this video. But if you want to watch the full speech, the full interview for Yuri Bezmenov, it's available on YouTube. And I encourage everybody to watch it. I actually have the shirt in the t-shirt store with Yuri on it saying Yuri was right. Because he was right. He was right. And the fact of the matter, and I'm going to get to him next, but Ayn Rand fully understood, as do most people who leave those systems. Defected Cubans, all right, most of whom are now conservative, all right, they're conservative because they understand what they left. And they understand where the far left is going. And they don't want any part of that. They don't want any part of that. And you can't blame them. But they've got it for, like, even their kids are getting educated by these coconuts and doodadoos in the school systems. And they're coming out with these bizarre concepts of what Cuba is and isn't, never having even been there. So convinced, in fact, that they tell their own parents who grew up there what's what. I can't even imagine how angry I'd be if I were a Cuban defector and struggled like hell to make life in the United States and have my own son come out of these classrooms with the thought process that they're given. I'd probably lose my mind. I'd probably lose my mind. All right, before I get into Yuri Bezmenov, I just want to give a note to people. If you haven't followed the channel yet, do me a favor, because I just realized recently one of the reasons why Facebook doesn't feel obligated to give notifications for live events, and I only put out like one video a week and then the live event on Wednesday. So you're not going to get inundated. But when you click follow, next to it, there is a bell. If you could click get all notifications and just confirm for me in the chat, or you can even message me if you need to. I know we don't have that many on right now on Facebook, but I don't know how many we have on Facebook, to be honest. Yeah, not that many. There's like 3 on Facebook right now. But if you could do me and by the way, we're streaming to Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and now Twitter. And please follow me on Twitter, because I'm paying big money for that blue check. No, just because I'm trying to grow the following there, and I would very much appreciate it if we could get some of the Facebook folks to migrate over. I got a feeling most of my followers on Facebook are also on Twitter or X, right? So, all right, so let's go ahead. Let me get into Yuri. So, Yuri Bezmenov, and then after this, we'll get into Alex Jones and how cool it is, and also get into this Tucker interview that just took place with him, where I'm going to run the clip of him making these wild predictions, like just nailing everything on the head before it happened, including 9/11, which is just the 9/11 one just has me floored. I did not even know that he nailed 9/11 like that, but he did. So I'm going to play that for you as well. Perfect. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. Yeah, I want to, because I'm trying to increase the distribution, and like even in the Patriot Think Tank group, which you guys can also join on Facebook, there's a feature that's at everyone, and it's supposed to alert everyone in your group. Now, I don't even moderate this group; I just let it go, and now Facebook's threatening me to moderate it for me, but I just let it go unless there's something grotesque, like we get some spam on there with porn and stuff. That stuff I remove. But as far as political opinions, no matter how wacky, I generally leave it up there. But you're supposed to hit add everyone, and everybody gets the alert. Well, after doing it like 3 or 4 times and getting a good response, now it has a note under it when I hit add everyone. some people might receive notifications. Like, what does that even mean? There's 1,000 or so people in there, and I'm like, what do you mean some people might? Like, I feel like as that filter goes down, right? First, it's some people. So you filter out. So it's definitely not all. And then it's might. And then it's like, well, wait a minute. Now you got to filter out of that next group. I'm like, and even this like @ followers feature they have, like it says on my thing, like a similar type message. It just basically says all your followers are not going to get this. So the only way I can see around it is if we actually click that bell and hit. And like I said, I'm not like, I'm not one of these guys, Russell Brand and stuff, that's putting out like 9,000 notifications a day. Like, it's just, you'll get one a week, maybe two on a crazy week 3 if there's some big deal going on. But that's about the gist of it. And Bob says, I'd follow on X, but they kicked me to the curb pre-Elon. They didn't even tell me why. You should try to reinstate that, because they look, they just let Alex Jones back on. You can't be more conspiratorial than Alex Jones. And when I say conspiratorial, I guess I mean, truth teller. I went to look up, a list of the predictions that he got right. And every single thing that came up in Google, even on DuckDuckGo, was talking about that shooting thing, which apparently, was totally overblown as well. And they destroyed the man's life for it. So, I don't know what that was all about. But there was a very interesting thing about him with Tucker, not with Tucker. They did a call, and it was like a who's who of people. Like it was this X space call, and in this thing, it's like a big conference call, and like General Flynn jumped on it, Vivek Ramaswamy jumped on it, that guy Tatum jumped on it, like all these freaking who's who of people. Alex Jones was obviously on it. Elon Musk himself got on. It was just like people popping on. Matt Dice got on. Like, it was just, I was looking at all these people like, holy smokes, dude, there's just like one after the other of like known names jumping onto this call. It was pretty wild, but they were all discussing Alex Jones's return, which I think is awesome. I think from an Elon Musk perspective, it adds legitimacy to what he's trying to accomplish with X. And you know what? Everyone's like, it still should call it Twitter. I'm like, you know what? No, it shouldn't, because he owns it and he calls it X. So X it is. Pretty simple to break that down. All right, so let's do Yuri now. So first one is going to be him explaining exactly what this type of psychological warfare is and what its general goal is. Now, he goes on in this interview outside of this clip to explain this in more detail. But I'm going to cover this, just what the general purpose of it is, and then you tell me if they succeeded in doing it, and then the next one will be his explanation of the demoralization process.
Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand.
Psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country.
Right? So just that piece, that clip right there. Think about that now. Now look back at the last 30 to 40 years, 50 really, or more at this point, right? It'd be 20, but 60 years actually. The last 60 years, not counting the early stages, which would take it to almost 70 years, right? 1949 is when the CCP was formed and made promise to their 100-year war, which they, hide your strength and bide your time was their motto. But at that same time, the Soviets were initiating theirs. And the Soviets actually started the very, very early process as early as the 20s. But you look at what's gone on, right? And how we look at society and we wonder, like, and think about it. Think about how many excuses we made over the years, right? Well, every generation is a little bit crazier than the last one. Like, we thought it was organic. Like, we talked about it like it was organic, right? Everybody I knew, with advertising, sex sells. Well, sex sells. Well, everything sells when it's marketed. Like, before the motto of sex sells, there were tons of successful commercials that had class. There were tons of successful commercials that didn't peddle smut. We were desensitized, I should say, or as Yuri would say, demoralized, into believing it was normal. I joke with people now, and I'm like, you know what? They never should have let Elvis wiggle his hips. and I joke like that because how many times, especially those in Gen X, how many times have you heard when something grotesque is put on television? How many times have you heard, well, there was a time when they wouldn't let Elvis wiggle his hips? And it's like the argument that the people were making back then, like in hindsight, those people were right. When you look at television today, trying to find good family programming to sit down and watch with your family is almost impossible. You can't even, like, Disney has made sure you can't even turn to them. You can't even turn to cartoons. Like, literally everything has been tainted. You got to, like, seriously search. And a lot of times they're B movies because Hollywood, satanic as it is, would never support a wholesome movie. Right? But the point here is that it's all by design. It's all by design. Yuri says in that interview, he says, all the dropouts from the 60s, the half-baked intellectuals, he's like, this was in 1984. And he's like, they're all in positions of power in the education system, in the media, in Hollywood, in politics. He's like, all those people that they've indoctrinated, that they've ideologically subverted, were in positions of power then. We're now at such an advanced stage that the professor, your professor's professor was subverted. And that was the idea. Like, when you listen to the Soviets, and I've watched many documentaries and such on active measures and ideological subversion, and basically the way that they saw it was, even if you have only 3,500 teachers, let's say, that you have on board, and there's 1 million or so in the country, right? This is just the universities they were talking about. They're like, those 3,500 teachers over the course of their career will likely teach 200, maybe 300 additional teachers who now all believe the same way they do. You follow? You start doing the math, and it becomes exponentially greater and greater and greater until, forget the 2020s, by the 80s, mid-90s, virtually everywhere, virtually every university in this country was absolutely infested with Marxist sympathizing professors, teaching and preaching that message that America is bad, that America is the devil, that this is the history you don't know, and basically giving you the Soviet Union version of history. And that's what these kids come out of it with. And they've been coming out generation after generation after generation, and now they're breaking it down. So they've successfully gone through the demoralization process, right? Which I should play that now. So I'll give you, here's the demoralization process from Yuri Bezmenov.
Demoralization, it takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see, most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them they are contaminated, they are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. It's simplistic. I know it sounds unpleasant. I know Americans don't like to listen to things which are unpleasant. But I have defected not to tell you the stories about such idiocies as microfilm, James Bond type espionage. This is garbage. You don't need any espionage anymore. I have come to talk about survival. It's a question of survival of this system. You may ask me, what is it in for me? Survival, obviously. Because unlike, as I said, I am now in your boat. If we sing together, we'll sing beautifully together.
All right, so there's his motive, right? Is that now he thought it would happen a lot faster than it did. Like he thought now, because in most countries it did. Like when you look at Venezuela, when you look at Vietnam, when you look at Cuba, right? What is it? El Salvador. I mean, all these smaller countries, once that first generation is indoctrinated, it's over. Now, the United States is much larger and much more complex than that. But the demoralization process, though, we've been living with, we've been living with demoralization of character for almost, since the 70s or late 60s. We've accepted low values. We've accepted low standards on behavior. We've accepted, we don't hold people accountable anymore. We don't, we basically, let him do what he wants. Let him do what he wants. Who am I to bother him? And there's an element of freedom in that, right? So there's the element of, it's not that I'm saying we should have made these things illegal, but they should have been shunned by society. We should have stuck with our religion. These children have been taught to dismiss religion. They've been taught that science is religion. And they've been taught that God is not real. They've been taught that they're not accountable for their lack of morality, that they can just live and do whatever feels well. Like, do as thou wilt, right? You've got designers out there, Balenciaga. Balenciaga, if you break it down, Balenciaga in Latin is do what you want. Or do as thou will. That's the designer company that had all that satanic crap in their advertising recently. These things have become norms. Pop culture has been used as a weapon, all right, to disassociate children from their families and to disassociate people from religion. Those are the two things that Marxism absolutely needs in order to thrive. And they have been somewhat successful in both. There are still enough Americans, though, that don't buy this crap, that know that it's crap, and they buy it when they're young and they're first learning it, but they get out in the real world and start asking questions and start realizing where righteousness is. And that's the only thing that's kept that in the Constitution are the only things that have kept us going for this long, or we would have fallen in Yuri's lifetime. And now that they've spent 2020 letting us know what's going, basically opening the door to everything that they've been doing and giving us a look into our children's classrooms, they're no longer operating in the shadows. And a lot of the reason they got past with all this progress and they were able to make all this headway is because they were able to do it in the dark. Parents, myself included, trusted teachers. All right. Before 2020, I knew there was some wacky stuff going on in certain schools in certain places, but I had no idea it was as prevalent as it was until I got to look, until we all got to look into kids' classrooms. Then it became like, well, what the hell is going on? And of course, boom, the fight was on now. And now, in my opinion, they've already lost the fight for the schools. Unless the child has a parent who also has been subordinated and believes all this stuff, and is bought in 100%. Unfortunately, that parent's going to poison that child. But the majority of parents that saw what was going on in classrooms were not okay with that. We're not okay with this, porn in classrooms and things of that nature. They just were not okay with that. And the war began. And if you go on Ballotpedia, you can see in 2020, I forget the exact numbers, but it was there was a threefold increase in school board recalls from 2021. I think it was 2020 to 2021. Because parents were just not having it. And now you're seeing things like in Temecula Valley School District here in the People's Republic of California, where they're catching on to it, and they won't allow LGBT flags or any other flag that's not the California flag or the United States flag. You've got Chino Hills district in California who have now who have voted to ignore and straight out embarrassed and attacked verbally one of the state superintendent who showed up at their board meeting to try and make the case that parents shouldn't be notified as they indoctrinate your children and sexualize your children, that parents should not be notified. Chino was like, hell no, we're notifying everybody. And when the state superintendent showed up to try and intimidate, they let him have it. She cut his mic off after 1 minute, chastised him. It was freaking phenomenal. Those are the kinds of things that are keeping us going. And what you're seeing now with acts like that is that now the war is being fought by two sides who know they're at war. This culture war for so long was being fought on one side. And everybody else on the other side were just downplaying it. No, there's no war on Christmas. I remember O'Reilly was talking about a war on Christmas all the time. He was 100% right. But people would, you're crazy. There's no war on Christmas. Yes, there is. There 100% is. They get away with putting Xmas where people think, it's just abbreviation. No, they're taking Christ out of Christmas. These things are not organic. These things do not happen just organically in society. These things are happening with purpose and with meaning. And it's our job to right that ship. And fortunately, we're on the path to doing that. We will deal the biggest blow when we call this convention. When we call this Article 5 convention, it'll be the first time that we really swung back. That we really, and hit something. Swung back and hit something. Hard. The federal government will never forget that shot to the brow. I guarantee you. I don't care which amendments get ratified. It won't matter. That'll be a shot to the head that they did not expect. They didn't expect, and from there on in, they will have to respect. Because every single thing they do once a convention is called and the process is completed, every single thing the federal government does, they're going to have to check with us first. And if they don't, and they do want to go off if they do want to continue to not secure the border, all right, well, now all of a sudden it's going to be on the news one day. 13 states have signed on for, pass amendments for border security. 18 states have signed on to pass amendments for border security. There's a historical chance the government could lose its constitutional authority to secure the border. 25 states, and guess what happens? The convention won't get called. And it probably wouldn't even get to 25. As soon as they heard 10 or 13, they know where this is headed. And they'll put the military on that border. I don't care who's in office. Because if there's anything that the federal government can't stand, it's losing power. And flexing our muscle to the point where we can directly impact the power and scope of that government. Being able to flex that muscle is a power that we've never utilized before. But one that is our constitutional right to do. And right now is the only option we have left. There's no one you can elect that's going to get our budget, that's going to stop the $36 trillion from turning into $40 trillion. There's no one you can elect that's going to impose term limits. There's no one you can elect that's going to unilaterally shut down all of these regulatory agencies. The only, because the Supreme Court has given those agencies all the power in the world. Maybe they cut them short at friggin' at mandates for vaccines, but if you read the description, if you read the court opinions, only Gorsuch and Alito felt that the entire concept was unconstitutional. Barrett and Kavanaugh, yeah, they voted against the mandate, but it was only because they didn't have a clear issue from Congress stating that specific purpose. If the legislature would have come together and put up legislation to give OSHA that power, Amy Barrett and Kavanaugh would have went along with it. You could bet Roberts' rhino butt would have went with it. Gorsuch and Alito are the only one. Gorsuch wrote in his opinion, not only is it wrong because they didn't have authority from the legislature, but even if he wrote this in his opinion, even if the legislature did give the authority, this would be an overreach of power. And once these courts start making decisions, there's only one way to overturn it. There's only one in our Constitution that allows us to overturn it, and that is a constitutional amendment. When the progressives could not get income tax passed because it was unconstitutional, and it was, they got their act together and damaged this country forever by getting the 16th Amendment passed. Because that's the only path. It's not presidents that put us in this bad way, with the exception maybe of Woodrow Wilson. FDR maybe too. But the majority of it was death by 1,000 cuts from small to large decisions from the Supreme Court over the course of a century that just permitted the federal government to do just about anything, that just disregarded the 10th Amendment in its entirety. And if you're not versed on the Constitution, since I pledged to be about that, the 10th Amendment would give any powers that do not belong to, that are not explicitly written in for the federal government to have in the Constitution, belong to the states and the people. But yet the government's found a way to control education curriculum. Crystal Jury says, not to argue. No arguments. Definitely taking all comments. But Christmas doesn't take the Christ out of Christmas. Look it up. I just did. Thought I had read it before. And it's an abbreviation, not to be used in the formal writing, but still correct. Yes, it's an abbreviation. But I don't know how you argue it doesn't take the Christ out of Christmas. You've got Christmas, and what got replaced with an X? I'm not looking for the formal definition of what they're saying. So I respect what you're saying, but look at it. Look at the word Christmas, and then look at the word Xmas. What was taken out? Right? You're not going to be able to look up the reasons for that. That's not the kind of thing Wikipedia is going to allow to be put in there and discussed. Google's not going to have, if there are articles, and I'm sure there are, discussing that very topic, you ain't going to find them on Google. Perfect example of Google today, I went in looking for Alex Jones so I could get the clip. I was looking for his 9/11 prediction, which was creepy as heck, and you can't find it anywhere on Google. You can't even find Tucker's interview, which is recent and has had millions of views. You can't even find that on Google. You know what you see on Google? Go ahead, have fun, look it up. Look for Alex Jones's 9/11 prediction video, which is incredibly popular right now because of the story broke that Elon Musk let Alex Jones back on Twitter or on X. You won't find it. What you're going to find is all the Sandy Hook shooting stuff and all of that, which I don't have time to get into, but Alex Jones explains all that. Alex Jones explains what was going on specifically with that, and he does. And I'll be honest, I just threw it away too and said, yeah, he said it. He did all that, and he did say it, and he says he said it, but he said it years ago. That it was a hoax or whatever. He interviewed a couple people who believed that. They sold him on the idea, and he went in one episode and talked about it, and then never addressed it again. But then they unearthed that episode, clipped it up to pieces, brought him to court, froze his bank accounts, shut him down on the internet, everywhere, with no ability to get back until now. But that's how deep state works. That just is what it is. I'm not shocked to hear all that. I still think there are things that Alex Jones says that he was wrong on, but the things that he was right on were big things. I'm going to play the clip. I'm going to play the clip of that. Yeah, Woodrow, right? Woodrow Wilson, guys. Next time you're about to call Biden or Obama the worst president in U.S. history, look it up, baby. It's Woodrow Wilson, who presided over the worst year for the Constitution as far as adding things to the Constitution that I can think of. And that's 1913. In the same year, I believe it was March of 1913, they passed the income tax. Later on, I think it wasn't long after, I think February was the income tax. April or so was the 17th Amendment, which stripped away power from the states and put it right back in the federal government, where the states were previously by the founders appointing senators to the federal government for good reason. They were appointing them because the power belongs in the states. If you get a Mitt Romney or a Liz Cheney or some coconut like that, you could go to your local legislator. You're not sitting on some waiting list in the federal freaking bureau. You go to your local legislator and raise hell. And when enough people do that, they pull that senator. They pull that senator and replace him. That power was taken away, was given away by the states under Woodrow Wilson. And believe me, it was Woodrow Wilson who was guiding this path. The closest thing we've ever had to a dictator by far. By far. Crystal says, just Googled it. I'm a little bit, I think I got a little ahead, and I'm not 100% sure. Are you Googling the, what was it? The Alex Jones? Let me know, because I could not find it. And it's, of course, possible that, nature of Google is everybody sees different stuff. But, it's very possible that Google, is just playing that game with me as an end user. Right? Have you ever tried that fun game where two people Google the same thing, but you get different results? They got to be niche things. It can't be something that's like only one answer. But if you try that, it's interesting. They highlighted that in that. I don't know how many of you saw that movie about social media. There's a documentary that came out where all the people that were involved in inventing it were being interviewed about how addictive it is and all that and they were all talking. There's a big section of it where they got into two people could have two completely opposing opinions, and part of the reason for it is every time they Google something, they're each seeing what Google wants them to see or what Google thinks they should see, and as a result they each get completely different information. And so both of them think they've researched something, and then and yet they come to two completely different conclusions because of the types of articles. Instead of just giving both sides of it, it gives the conservative person the conservative articles and the Marxist articles, and they get the freaking, and they both validate themselves and they move on. Warren Owen, how are you, sir, over on Facebook? Great show. Alex Jones was and is right. Yeah, I got to be honest. When I saw this, let me play the clip because this clip is this clip blew me away a little bit. I saw it on the Tucker interview with him, and I was like, "What the hell?" I didn't know about the one in 2000 where he called it was 2000 or 2001. I think it was July before the attacks where he did it. But here.
Better hit rate than CNN. That the new policy's being written, you will all have to wear masks again, and so will airport employees.
It's happening. Mask mandates are officially back.
We know the Joint Chiefs of Staff wanted to blow up airliners, Baltimore Sun, or if you let some terrorist group do it, like the World Trade Center, we know who to blame. And if there was an outside threat like a bin Laden, who was a known CIA asset in the 80s,
this group and its leader, a person named Osama bin Laden,
he's the boogeyman they need.
We're looking at a giant war in February right now. I predict the Russians are going to roll in. They're already there. They're going to roll in.
With attacks across Ukraine, which is the size of Texas.
It really was the Iraqis. That's just because they're getting ready to invade Iraq. And what a beautiful setup.
So that was the clip that Tucker put on, he played while he was interviewing him. And when I saw the 9/11 one, I was like, what the heck? Like, that's wild. And like, now mind you, like the disclaimer is Alex Jones predicts a lot of stuff. And truth be told, they're not predictions in the sense of, like he's just, Nostradamusing or, using tea leaves. He does a ton of research. The thing that Alex Jones does is he reads entire documents that nobody else does. Nobody else does. Right. And they were going over some specific documents, and Tucker was admitting, he's like, yeah, I didn't read that whole thing. And Jones is like, I did. He's like, I read them all. And when you do that, when you're reading all this information, it's there. More times than one thing we've learned, especially recently, is that this stuff isn't necessarily all top secret. A lot of this stuff is out there in the public space to be viewed. Nobody knows where to look for it, and when they do find it, they don't read it. So that's, Bob says, duck, why Xmas? It will take you to Xmas in Wikipedia. Says X is the first letter of the Greek. Yeah, exactly. Like they give, but like the bottom line that I'm trying to say with Xmas is there's one thing missing in Xmas, and it's Christ. And it's not an accident. That's all I'm saying. It's not an accident. It's not like, we can only fit this much space. Why don't we just say Xmas instead? Like, it's not how it works. It's not how it works. Now, does that mean that every single person that used Xmas, throughout the 80s and 90s and such, does that mean that every single store owner or someone were intentionally trying to take Christ out of Christmas? No. It's not, or consciously trying to take Christ out of Christmas? No. But the fact that it became acceptable to do that, like you could never have done that in the early 50s. It would have been outrage if somebody wrote Xmas, whatever the Google definition is. It would have been outrage for obvious reasons. But by the 80s, true to Yuri Bezmenov, we were demoralized already. We were already accepting of just about anything. Really, there was nothing there was no moral compass to guide the nation. And that's what that's the point that I'm trying to make. The best clip from Alex Jones was on Jesse Ventura's show and warned about vaccines. Yeah, you're right. He was all over the vaccine thing too. I couldn't even find the 9/11 clip, so I wasn't going to go trying to hunt for that. It's clear you'll have a hard time finding information on Alex Jones on the web. It's not impossible to find, but you're not going to get it but from quick searches. That's just not, you'll get information on him, but it's all bashing him Like, you're not going to get in. There aren't too many articles out there that are going to come up in a search that are, saying, wow, this guy was right. You're not going to get too much of that, which is fine. That's the world we live in at this point. It's not fine, but that's the world we live in right now. And my expectations of Google are incredibly low anyway. I really don't use it at all unless I'm looking for like a recipe, or, I want to know what the score of the game is, or I need directions, right? That kind of stuff I use it because I have an Android phone and it's kind of there. But if I'm looking up something serious, if I'm looking up something that has political ramifications, the only time I use Google is if I want to know what the left thinks about it. If I'm trying to be balanced and I'm trying to get the left's opinion on something, then I'll Google it, because I know that everything that comes up in the search is going to be the left's opinion on whatever that topic is. But if I want to know like objective information about a given topic, I'll go to DuckDuckGo 100% of the time. And it's not as intuitive as Google could be, but that's because it's not following me and tracking my data all day. So you know what? I'm okay with that. Like, I came of age with microfiche and catalog boxes. I don't need it spoon-fed to me at that price. So all Alex Jones clips are on Twitter. Maybe I'm just not following the right people. I got, and Warren, just so you know, I don't know if you're already following, but I am asking people to jump on X and give me a follow there. I will return the favor. I guess that's a thing. But I don't mind being in touch back and forth with the people who are following the page or the channel or whatever you call it on X. But in the end, I'm just now starting to, figure out who to follow and kind of I hated Twitter forever. I still don't like the platform as far as the way it works. But the fact that it's so dialed in on free speech, I can't help but acknowledge that it's going to be a better environment for the channel in the long run. So I am trying to grow that. So if I could just take the 18,000 from right here in Facebook and just say, all right, everybody get up and walk over to this room. I would like to do that, even though I know all 18,000 of you will never see an alert for a broadcast. The other thing I threw out there, folks, that I threw out earlier, I'm going to throw out a couple of times during each broadcast. When you go, if you're following the page, click the bell and get all notifications, because they're not going to give you some. They're likely going to give you none if you don't. This is the world that any person who comes on and talks politics that are not in the wheelhouse. If I'm not on there saying I love Biden, that's how it's going to go. But the one way to thwart that is to click that button. I only put out one live video and maybe another video throughout. It looks like they may have lifted the shackles on me. I'm going to find out. I'm going to take this intro ticker and just throw it out there, see how it does. It's not a very, crazy video, but if it gets 100 views out of the 18,000 followers, I know the shackles are still on. If it gets 1,000 or more quickly, then that would be a sign that the shackles are off. And then I may start producing some more content. If there's anything you guys would like to see produced, as far as like those short clip videos, slight music in the background, but like compilations of clips, people telling you, like I did with the Great Reset and all the other stuff, then let me know. Give me some ideas. You can message the page directly. But Alex Jones, man, I mean, this guy. When I heard him predict 9/11, now, yes, Warren, you were right. He did predict the vaccines as well. But the thing is, he researches this stuff, and he's not always going to be right. So I don't want to paint the picture. I don't think that's a fair expectation. If you got any one of those things, right? I mean, he called the war in Iraq before it was a thing. Before there was a battle cry, before there was any of that, he was like, no, it's obvious they're going into Iraq now, and they're going to make Saddam the boogeyman, and they want the oil. And so, like he was just saying these things flippantly, but was right. But to be able to see in the tea leaves and see in all the paperwork and the papers that he reads, be able to see and he straight out said, if there are planes that hit the Trade Center, we know who to blame. I mean, I don't know where I stand on the 9/11 thing. I've been on the fence with that for a while. I personally have been in the World Trade Center many times. As a child, my mom was a secretary and paralegal for a law firm there that were on the 102nd floor of all things. So, I mean, I've been in there. I've felt that building sway with the wind. So there are some things that, like, where people are like, well, why didn't the building just topple over sideways? And I'm like, the building was designed to handle impact. Like, I could absolutely see from having been there and felt that. I mean, it swayed to the point where things would fall off the desk. like I'd be sitting there with my coloring books and all my crayons would just fall off onto the floor because the building was swaying because of the winds. Like, the building was designed to take an impact. Not to mention it was a steel frame building as opposed to, like, so there's reasons why some of this stuff could have happened that I'm not as blown away as some of these other people are with it. But there are also some things that are questionable. So, I'm open-minded to that. I just, it's a little deep for me to be like, we planned 9/11. And I'm not going to say it would shock me to get absolute proof that it happened, but I would need better proof than I've seen so far on documentaries and things of that nature. So it is what it is. But the fact is, whatever. Alex Jones called it, and he called Iraq. He knew that Ukraine was coming. Ukraine, I thought, was a little bit easier. I kind of felt, I don't know. I got to look at what the dates are and when he was saying the Ukraine thing, because I knew we were going into Ukraine way before we went into Ukraine too. Like, I saw at that point, I saw the writing on the wall. I was looking now, right? So now, this is post 2020. Now I got my eyes open, and when I saw that whole thing go down and start to build up, it made sense to me. When I heard us talking about, Ukraine would be a part of NATO and this, and I'm like, that's going to cause a war. I knew that. I'm like, Russia's going to go in. The media was still saying, well, if Russia goes in, I'm like, no, Russia's going to go in. If you say NATO is going to take in Ukraine, Russia is not going to allow that to happen. Everybody who understands the world stage out there, Eastern Europe, knows that. And it should have been no shock to anyone that Russia went into Ukraine. It was 100% provoked by us. 100%. It's analogous to the Cuban Missile Crisis from Russia's perspective. We want to put an enemy to Russia wants to put troops on the direct border of Russia. Like, Russia's never going to allow that. And they don't even want Ukraine per se. It's not even like they want to take it over. They kind of like the idea because it's kind of a part of the Soviet Union anyway. Most of them speak Russian. Half the country is loyal to Russia. And the fact of them, and the other half is totally not. But the fact of the matter is, Russia likes them as a buffer. He likes to have them as a buffer. He likes the fact that they're there and they're not a part of NATO. And there's no, they keep that out. They keep that out of their border. Warren says, I'm following you on X. I can't send anything on Facebook Messenger anymore. I post everything on X. Warren, I gotta get to let me hit me up with your name on X, and I will follow you as well if I'm not already. I don't think I am, but give me your name, and we can and we'll connect that way. And that goes for anybody else as well. Hit me up on X. The more people, the more followers I have on there, the more compelled I'm going to be to start going out and posting more stuff and doing more things. These streams do go to X as well. So now how they're doing right now, probably not good, since now I have 45 followers. Holla. But so I went up one follower during the broadcast. Not sure if that was you, Warren, but cool, right? So I'm just looking at X right now as far as, so it looks like there's 2 likes. There's 5 5 impressions, 2 engagements. So 2 people watching on X. I don't get the stats for X on my software here, but it does stream through, it does connect with X. So hopefully they will link the comments as well. So for the live broadcast, from an engagement perspective, I would tell folks be on either Facebook, YouTube, or Rumble. Rumble, I keep checking from time to time, although I never seem to get a lot of comments on Rumble. But I do go back time to time and check. But it's Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube that I can put on the screen like this. And I'm considering doing the whole chat box, have the whole chat box there. I just don't know how to do that yet. I have to go into a different software to do it. But contact. What's up, brother? Yeah. So 9/11 conspiracy theories are just that. I've been through this many times. Yeah. Look, like I said, I'm on the fence with 9/11. I don't think it's as. I think it might be a little crazier than what I think it is, but I don't think it's as crazy as some people think it is. I guess that's the best way to put it. So. BlackRock, is there help to help rebuild? Oh, is there to help rebuild? Yeah, BlackRock, look, we can go on I could do a whole nother live broadcast on BlackRock, right? I mean, they're just that freaking organization, man. I'll tell you something though, for anyone who watches, because I know we're all patriots. I don't care who you're voting for. I know that a lot of Trump supporters have been hard on DeSantis for really no reason, only because perhaps they see him as a threat. I don't know how. Trump is like 30 points ahead or something. But in the end, DeSantis, this is one of the reasons I do love this man and want him to be, want him to stay main in the stage. I'd like to see him succeed Trump, after the next presidency. I feel like people just got to get Trump out of their system. Like, they ain't nobody going for anybody but Trump, but once that's over, I'd like to see DeSantis assume that role. And it's for reasons like BlackRock, like he does things that demonstrate to me that he really does understand the world stage better than existing presidents. Like when he went after Confucius Institutes, now it sparked this whole thing. And now, Congress went after it, and now states are starting to crack down on Confucius Institutes, which were poisoning our education system for decades through the CCP. When it came time to deal with BlackRock, like, he recognized where BlackRock's wealth comes from, and a lot of it is from state pension funds. And so he removed Florida's state pension fund from BlackRock. They're one of the only states that do not associate with BlackRock. And guess what? Their pensions are doing fine. I mean, as fine as pensions do, I suppose, right? Pensions are pretty much all upside down, as we have now learned. It's an unsustainable model. But that being said, they're not worse off. Like, they're not more upside down than they were when they were using BlackRock. So, like, why give organizations like BlackRock that money? It just bothers me. All right, I see your handle there, Warren, and I never would have guessed that. So I'm glad you put it up there. So I will, after this, go ahead and follow you on there. Okay, so yeah, I mean, look, I could go on. Look, I mean, you can see. You don't wear a shirt like this unless you got a little faith in the conspiracy theorists, right? I mean, and this shirt's available, by the way. Patriot Think Tank, thepatriotthinktank.com. There's a link up top for the store. It'll take you to my Etsy store. Shirts like this. Yuri was right. Once you see, you cannot see. All the stuff that I wear on the broadcast are available there. So, definitely go pick one up for the holidays. But that being said, when it comes to conspiracy theories and how, what we want to believe, what we don't want to believe, there was a day, I've said this many times in the broadcast, where in the past, I was that guy. I believed in going into Iraq. I ate the soup, right? I ate the soup, so to speak. I thought, I thought the Republican Party was right and the Democrat Party was wrong. That whole talk track. And the reality is, like, I now realize there are no parties. This is one big game, and we're it's one big joke, and we're the punchline. And the fact of the matter is, they all need to be dealt with. There are plenty of dirtbags on both sides, and obviously Marxists are Marxists, right? But that's how I see it: Americans and Marxists. When it comes to the voters, I see Americans and I see Marxists. I can see people who call themselves Democrats who are still disillusioned the way I was then. Loyally voting the party line. Loyally voting in these freaking dynasty families, right? And not thinking anything of it. Just clicking that R, moving on. I'm not that way now, right? But I'm eons away from being like that. But I'm not one of those people who pretends I knew it. Like, I ain't that person either. I know what my weaknesses were. I learned from them. I grow, and here I am, right? And that's all we can do. But the number of people who swear they were against the Iraq War, after the fact, it just makes me tear up laughing. Because the reality of the matter is, I lived through it. And everybody was dead. I'm talking 99.99% of the people in this country that I would come across were understood that there was a good reason to go into Iraq, because we all believed. There were very few people, even the people that hated Bush, they all shut their mouths for that moment and were all in. And time went by. Weapons weren't there. Now, truth be told, I still actually believe this to some degree. There were gas weapons there. There were some weapons of mass destruction. He just moved them to Syria. How do I know that? Because Syria used them. So that validated the rumor that he moved them all to Syria. But in the end, it doesn't matter. They weren't in Iraq. We should have known that. We probably did know that. It still went in for our own reasons. And that military-industrial complex is going to be the biggest fish for we the people to fry. I mean, I would love to see Donald Trump get in and then appoint Ron DeSantis as the head of the DOJ. That's what I would like to see. And when that second-in-command guy walks up, I mean, I think it would be more epic if it was Trump himself. But that ain't going to happen. So put DeSantis in there. And I just want to be a fly on the wall when that second-in-command guy, whose job it is to walk director after director after director and through how it works, right? Show them how the game is played. This is what we do. This is how you do it. This is just listen to all that go down right before DeSantis fires him and brings in his own guy. That's the kind of stuff I would like to see. All right, let me see here. Let's get some comments. Trump's wife wants Tucker to be the vice president. Yeah, you know what? Look, Tucker wants no part of that for starters. But, look, it's the vice presidency. I don't even care. I mean, what? Maybe why? Because so Tucker can do investigative journalism from the VP spot. You could just give him access. He'd be better off being a journalist and just giving him access so that you don't have to deal with all the red tape. That's my opinion. But, it is what it is. But I think he'd be more powerful, just like I think Trump would be more effective as the head of the DOJ or the head of Homeland Security. I'm sorry. Head of Homeland Security, right? That oversees everything now. So you put him in that role. And the damage he would do to the military-industrial complex, which, let's face it, that's the evil in this world, in this country anyway. They are the ones that have caused everything bad throughout our history in the last 50 years or whatever it is. What about Vivek as Secretary of State? Yeah, Vivek needs seasoning, man. He needs time to cook. I got Vivek in the smoker. It's set at 325. I'm going to catch up with him around 2030. and I hope he stays out active and is opinionated and is, taking on these people and, all that. But the thing about Vivek, like, I like him on his points. I like the fact that he says the unpopular thing unapologetically. Like, he's the only one to this moment, not Trump, not DeSantis, not anybody, hit the nail on the head with Ukraine and said, when they said, well, how would you bring this to a peaceful end? He was like, well, I'll publicly declare that Ukraine will never be a part of NATO. Ding, 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 ding. Like, I was just like, I literally clapped out loud when I heard that, because that's it. It's that simple. Like, I heard Trump's response. DeSantis barely even has a response. It was some politicese. I don't know what the hell he said. Like, I was done listening to it, and I was like, all right, I have no idea what you would do. Which is almost better than what Trump said. Trump said, if you remember, in that interview, it was recent, where he was like, in classic Trump fashion, I'll tell Zelensky, you got to make a deal, man. You got to make a deal. Which was funny. I missed that about Trump. Like, hearing him say that kind of stuff. But then what he said about Putin, he's like, I'll just tell Putin, we're gonna give them more than they've ever gotten. We're gonna give them more than they've ever. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa! Like, settle down, Tiger. Like, that is the wrong approach. Let us not go that way. I hope you are just throwing a false hand out there because that was a scary response. But Vivek came right out and was just like, we're just gonna make sure everybody understands with no issues whatsoever. Ukraine does not get into NATO. Putin will pull out tomorrow if he believed that to be true. He doesn't need to be wasting time and resources in there. So I got a really long comment from Jerry Rowe. I don't know, Jerry, if I could. I'll try and put it on the screen. It's going to take up my whole screen. Let me see. No, it's not too bad. All right. So I'm a farm boy and engineer. Some say planes cannot take down the World Trade Center. But all that fuel up in the wind can indeed do it. Yeah, they absolutely can. The fact that it's steel framed and all that is not a conspiracy. It's legit. That's how it's built, and it can melt under those. Yeah, absolutely, I agree. It acts somewhat like a blowtorch. Steel. Yep. Steel does not melt. It just gets softer, and the hotter it gets. Right. Exactly. And then the weight, and then everything is built stacked above. Right. So he says, hot steel is absolutely going down. Ask any Amish blacksmith making horseshoes. It isn't any different. Well, you went Amish blacksmith on me. Now, how am I supposed to find an Amish blacksmith? You're giving me a research challenge that I can't really mess with. I say nothing unexpected there, and later heard the Muslims that planned the first failed attack speculated about planes hitting the tower part way up. Makes sense. Hit as low as you can. Right. And yeah, and if they had done that, if they had hit it very low instead of at the top, you would have had, or there would have been a very good chance you would have had that sideways fall effect, because nothing would be collapsing on itself. But you can't really hit the Trade Center low. Like, that's the thing. I mean, maybe in the middle and get some of that, but like, you can't really hit it low. The city doesn't allow for it. If you know Chambers Street, right? It doesn't allow for that. You'd have to hit it best midsection, but they hit it all the way on the top where it's most flexible, right? That's where all the flex beams are. That's where that thing was designed to swing back and forth. I told you I was in there. I was in there a lot as a kid. My mom used to take me to work with her because there's no one to watch me. And I've been to Windows of the World, which is the restaurant on the top, and the building moves, man. It moves. It's not like a slight sway. It freaking swayed, man, like stuff falling off desk sway. So that thing could definitely take an impact. I'm with you on that one, Jerry. So, but I'm also open-minded, to see what comes out as far as, some of the other stuff. Some of the things about Building 7 were a little suspicious. There's some stuff there that, there's a there, but it's not like it's just not on the level. Like as far as like, it wasn't really terrorists that did it and that sort of thing. I don't buy. It's the second time they tried to hit it. It's exactly, in the forte of what they would do. Like the stars line up for that sort of thing. So like, I'm not fully sold on that. I mean, I don't look at it like flat Earth, where I'm just laughing and, and whatever. I listen, right? I've learned to always listen now, and I don't consider any theory too crazy, right? And I just kind of hear it out. And a lot of them, I just kind of dismiss because they're a little over the top, but a lot of them have some merit to them, right? Like, and you don't want to close your mind to it because think about it, right? 5 years ago, if I told you everything that happened in the last 3 years, you'd be like, get the hell out. You'd laugh me out of the room. You'd laugh me out of the room. So, the world's a crazy place now, and there definitely are. Like if I told you in 2018, if I told most people, right? I don't want to, chances are with my following, someone more than one person's going to pop up and be like, nope, I was all over it. But if I told you, most people in 2018, look, there's a global elite who's absolutely out there. They're going to release a pandemic. They're going to, or that a pandemic's going to happen. There's this globalist movement that's going to take advantage of it. There's going to be people being forced to wear masks, not allowed to go out in society. There's going to be mandates for vaccines that don't prevent you from getting the disease. There's going to be all kinds of conspiracy theories flying around all over the place. Like if I told you all that stuff in 2018, you'd be like, get the hell out of here. So it like crazier things have happened. The spectrum of what I will tolerate as a potential truth, right? And of course, you always have to look up, validate, etc. But the things that I will give credence enough to go and look up and try and validate, etc., is a much wider spectrum than after 2020 than it was before 2020. That's for sure. And I think most Americans are in that frame of mind. And look, I mean, really, now I'm sitting here having an episode on my broadcast telling you about how we were all mind screwed and have lived our whole lives, believing things that simply were being pumped into our head and our morality being drained out of us while we let it happen. And I know that there were people who were still devout throughout, and it didn't happen to everybody, but society as a whole allowed itself to disintegrate. There was not enough outrage at Hollywood turning into what Hollywood turned into. There was not enough, not enough outrage at the level of idiocy that was coming out of our college students. I mean, the absolute lack of history that they understand, and the little bit that they do understand, they got wrong, right? Like there hasn't been any accountability from society for those things in these decades. Like we own this problem as much as anybody else. Trump said he would stop funding the war in Ukraine to end it. He said he would tell Putin to work together to end terrorism. Pretty sure it was his last Tucker interview. I didn't see his last Tucker interview, so I won't combat that. But I heard him. Like the thing about Trump is, like he makes this stuff up as he goes along. I mean, he clearly said what he said in the interview that I saw. There were other disturbing things that he said too. I mean, with China, like this guy wants to negotiate with them. Like that's when you act like he basically first he said China doesn't hate the United States. They just love China. And I know what he's trying to say there, and he's still wrong. They hate the United States. The CCP has hated the United States. It's documented. They wrote it. Since 1949. Actually, a year before they even won in China. It was like 1948. They were talking about taking down the United States. One leader after another has been duped. There's Nixon, Carter, freaking all of them, all the way up the chain. One BS story after another about, reason to negotiate with the Chinese when the entire time they were just biding time. The first time they decided they saw the light and they were going to do the capitalist thing. The first time they did that was because the Soviets were about to kick their teeth in. So they came and acted friendly to us. Nixon bought it all. And I ain't going to look, maybe Nixon really believed, that, but before Nixon went to visit China, and it was touted in the United States as this like big diplomatic visit and the doors were opening, this and that. Nixon wasn't even out of the country yet before the anti-American propaganda started hitting the televisions again. Like, to think that you can negotiate with the CCP is to completely not understand the history of the CCP and Americans' relationships. Like, I don't care about the 25% tariff if you don't understand that. If you're going to if Trump tries to negotiate with these people, I'm going to throw up in my mouth. Because, look, and I know it sounds like I'm bashing Trump here, but you know what? He says these things. And I'm not the cult member. I'm not that Trump voter. Like, I'm not the Trump voter that just keeps making apologies for everything he does. I ain't that guy. I don't do that for anybody, and I ain't doing it for him. He has said some stupid stuff over the course, and this is why he ain't in those debates. Don't get it twisted. It ain't that I'm above this. That's nonsense. He's got a lead, and the only thing he can do to lose that lead is show up to those debates, because it ain't going to be Hillary Clinton in those debates. It ain't going to be some guy with dementia in those debates. It's going to be hard-hitting, executive experienced people, and who have a better handle on the issues than he does. Like, he won't be able to do the whole, I'm going to tell him it's going to be great. It's going to be better than anything you've ever seen. Like, he's going to have to say what, right? He's going to have to say what in those debates. It still bothers me a little bit that he didn't do any debate, that he's just sitting on his lead and running out the clock. Like, that's because I want to hear these people exchange ideas. I want to hear, like, I still believe in the Republic. like I don't believe in preordained leaders. Like, that's just not my thing. I kind of do the American thing where that stuff ain't supposed to happen. But, whatever. It's gonna happen because he ain't gonna debate. Frankly, if I were his advisors, I'd tell him not to as well. But it bothers me as a citizen because I have a right to hear them. If you're going to run for the presidency of the United States, the least you could do is show me enough respect as a citizen to tell me what the hell your positions are and allow those positions to be questioned by the people that you're running against, by the other people that are there to be chosen from. I'm not even saying that it would sway me. I just want to hear it. I just want to hear it. That's it. Because there's a lot of things that he says that are suspect. And if someone was going to call him on those things, I don't know how he'd respond. I don't know. But there are definitely world demographic issues or world issues, I should say, that he's not fully dialed in on, and he was already president for 4 years. So that should concern you. I don't care who you vote for. That should concern you. I'm probably going to end up voting for the man anyway, because I see where this is headed. And the majority of the country at this point, the more they try to bring trumped up charges, pardon the pun, against this guy, the more people are going to be signing on the wagon to vote. It's a cult of personality that cannot be stopped right now. I just hope to God that he's playing games with some of these answers, and because he doesn't put the best people around him. I think we've all seen that. It scares me to death. That's another thing that scares me to death, is how bad the people he surrounds himself are. I mean, he wrapped himself in deep state operatives. Now I understand how do you know, right? I get that. But I hope he learned that lesson, right? That's something he's got to come in and make a difference. Let me see some of these comments. I'm going to get ready to jump here, guys, in a moment, but I will check out some more of these comments before I go, guys, on Rumble. Still don't see any comments here, but let me on the upper, on the left, on the right side. I made that confusing enough. On the right side of the screen for Rumble, you can drop a comment. I just put one in there that said comment here. So I got that up on my screen as well. I agree with you. However, he had moderators and Chris Crispy, Chris attacking him. It's like a sandbox without him. Yeah, no, it's not just. And frankly, I agree with the premise. Like Chris Christie should not be on that stage. I don't know. Everyone in their right mind knows this man cannot win the presidency. We're deep enough in right now. This guy's got to get off the stage. Like right now, he's like a Nikki Haley supporter, like a pom-pom Nikki Haley, the fattest cheerleader we'll ever see, out there supporting Nikki Haley, going after Vivek, and DeSantis just kind of sits there above it all. Like, when do I get to talk about my track record? When do I get to talk about the things I've actually done in an executive office? Like, when do I get to talk that affect the world stage, by the way? When do I actually get to talk about these things? While the rest of these clowns and doo-doo-doos just have at it with their, Chris Christie needs to be removed from that stage. The people that belong on the stage, all right, are DeSantis, Vivek, and Nikki Haley. And then, of course, Trump. And I'm not a big Nikki Haley fan at all. I like her. I liked her with the UN. I liked her attitude when she was in there. I like how she handled that position. But her positions on Ukraine and like she's a little bit off. So I can't, to me, she sounds disconnected. And I think Vivek hit her and Christie actually pretty hard when he's like, they're both warmongering for Ukraine, but they couldn't name you 2 provinces in Ukraine that they want to spend all this money to protect. And both of them fell silent. Either one, that's an opportunity. If you get hit like that, you got to jump out and name 2 provinces in Ukraine. They named none. They just sat there and took that, which tells you they don't know 2 provinces in Ukraine. But yet they want to spend all this blood and treasure to go there. Yeah, no thanks. Vivek nailed him with that one. But it is what it is. I mean, in the end, I could talk all I want. In the end, Trump's going to win the nomination, barring some, I guess Deep State's not done with him yet, right? So let's see what they got up their sleeve. But if it goes to that and it comes to the vote, I think if Deep State's going to do something crazy, they're going to wait till he wins the primary first. Then they're going to do something crazy. If that's going to happen. And I do believe, I think most people are kind of sitting on edge a little bit right through 2024 because we don't know. We don't know. But the only thing we know for sure is that the only thing we know for sure is that they don't want him in there, and they're going absolutely out of their minds to stop it. So, when you get the Deep State motivated on that level, we pray, right? We pray it comes to a fair election and a clean election, and, pray, but validate too, right? We need to, part of the prayers will be answered by the actions that we take. So, we've got to, you can't just sit back and be like, God got this, because God's sitting there going, it's like that joke where the guy's drowning. Said, God, please save me. And a boat comes by and the guy's like, no, the Lord will save me. And then a tanker comes by. The Lord will save me. I don't need you. No. And then a rubber raft comes by. Come on, get in. No, the Lord will save me. And the guy drowns. And he gets to heaven and he says, Lord, I was waiting for you to save me. He's like, I sent a boat. I sent a tanker. Right. So it's dependent on the actions we take. And so McCain in heels, Nikki and DeSantis. Who's McCain in heels? Is that Nikki? I got it because unless you're saying DeSantis is wearing heels too. I'm a DeSantis fan, 100%. Like I'll end up. The primary doesn't matter as much for me because I'm in the People's Republic of California. Like I vote for it just because it's my duty. But the election process here is pretty bad. But I mean, in the general election, I'm all in for. Look, I'm all in for Trump. It's not like I'm going to go vote for Biden. Right? Let's just use our head, or Gavin Newsom, right? But at the same time, I think by far, DeSantis, from an overall well-rounded and qualification perspective, is the best candidate running. I do. But I also understand we got to get this Trump thing out of our system. Like it's got to run its course. We need to get that 4 years back in. Just let him do his thing and get a little vindication. And it's not like I think Trump's going to hurt the country. He'll do well in handling China. He'll do well in handling the border. There are things that he will do well with that are crucial that we need right now. He'll get the economy, for what it's worth. He's going to do nothing for the economy from a debt perspective. He'll hurt just like every president hurts in that perspective. But he'll get the job numbers up. He'll get the fluff statistics that presidents like to run on. We will certainly be in a better way. And he won't be signing spending bills like crazy, so it should help inflation get under control. So in those ways, he will absolutely be, be effective for the country. But if this broadcast, no president's going to get us where we need to be. This is what's going to get us to where we need to be. And that's just the long and short of it. There's the power isn't there for the president to do that. So no matter who wins, it doesn't. In that sense, it doesn't matter. We just right now, like my goal for whoever becomes president is that we stop the bleeding. You hold it down while we do our job. That's how I see it. And I'm a little bit fearful that people really believe Trump's somehow going to save us in all areas and veer away from an Article 5 movement because their guy is in office. Like I really hope that civics is not that far gone, that people understand the government a little bit more than that, and will act accordingly. Because the president's not like Trump was in office. Everyone touts the great economy, and it was a good economy as far as jobs and all that. But at the same time, the debt skyrocketed. like eventually, it's not going to matter how good the front face economy is when the weight of that debt crashes through the ceiling. Like eventually, like that, and that's why I downplay the good economy a little bit, because it's not going to matter if the economy is doing well or bad by traditional standards if that debt keeps growing. If that debt there's only one way to turn the debt clock back, and that is through constitutional amendment. That is it. The government's not giving up 1 ounce of power, not 1 ounce, granted to it not by the Constitution, but by Supreme Court interpretations of the Constitution, which were wrong. And there's a way to remedy that, but we have to do it. And that's the key. The president can't, the House has power of the purse, okay? They're going to piss away money through a sieve if we don't put restrictions on that. President's not going to stop that. It's just not going to happen. Single subject bills? Yeah, okay, Gates got that through in the House. How'd that work out? No, that needs to be a part of the Constitution for both the House and the Senate. That any bill they pass, one subject. You want to write a veterans bill and then tag on, the $200 million to study quails, the effect of cocaine on the sex habits of quails? No. You have to put a separate bill and go down having voted for studying the cocaine habits and their effect on the sexual behavior of quails. Yes, that's a real thing. And the reality of the matter is, we don't pay attention to it, and we allow. And the most insulting part about it is how they play us. Oh, and both sides do this. So they'll put up a veterans bill. They pawn our veterans all the freaking time, and it makes me sick. They'll put up a veterans bill, and then on the back end of it, they'll put all kinds of crap that there's no way the other side's going to vote for. And they put this bill together with no intention of it ever passing. The only reason they would put the bill together is so that the other side can't vote for it. And then they go on television, all the talking heads, and say, this side will not vote for a bill to save our veterans and get them X, Y, and Z and blah, blah, blah. And we believe it like a bunch of idiots. You know, the ideological subversion, when they were talking about active measures like a 7-step phase or 7 ingredients, one of them is the useful idiot. And that's us. Like, we hear them do this stuff and we get right online, or these people won't, the right won't vote for a veterans bill. They say they love the veterans. Ha, ha, ha. Or the left won't vote for a veterans bill. And they all know the game that they're playing. The only people who don't know the game are the people. And that makes us the useful idiots, because then we go out and play along with the talk track. Bankers and military industrial complex tenant for cause. Yeah, look, everyone in this country that is on the Marxist, in the Marxist playbook, everyone, every industry, everything. If they truly believe in it, now a lot of industry doesn't really believe in it, but they behave the way the power goes. So they're going to do whatever the power is making them do. And one thing that's been proven is that the left is far more diabolical than the right when it comes to punishment. And corporations don't want any part of that. So they're trying to jockey. They're hedging bets, saying the globalists are going to win. Many of them are anyway. The entire laundry list that was going to abandon advertising for X, yeah, they're all hedging their bets that the Marxists are going to win, and they're jockeying for their position in this new world order. Warren Buffett might know something selling off $28 billion in stock. Yeah, look, I don't mess with stocks at all. You know, Buffett's a special animal, right? But I don't mess with stocks at all because I just don't trust the market. The whole thing is rigged. The whole thing is rigged. It's not that you can't make money in it. It's just that there's always that moment. Like, I'm always waiting for that shoe to drop where the people that are holding the strings either get caught doing something dirty or something, and the whole damn thing collapses. I'd far rather, invest in something real like real estate. Which, by the way, I just recently passed my real estate exam and got my license to sell property in the People's Republic of California. So right now it's going to be a side hustle to my current employment. But I am exploring, dipping my toe in the water, found a very exciting broker, and I am looking forward to the future that comes from that, for sure. But yeah, real estate, I don't like gold. I'm not a gold fan. To me, gold is like, what do you do with it? What do you do with it? Like, all right, I got a bag full of gold now. If I got a bag full of gold and the economy crashes, the dollar is gone, chaos ensues, CBDC is coming in, all hell in the streets, dogs and cats living together, all this stuff going on, people are going to be raiding homes, opening safes, and being like, there's just gold. Where are the bullets and the and the food, right? Or, is there any whiskey? You're gonna hear stuff like that. Like, this gold freaking weighs a ton, man. Nobody wants it. That's one scenario. The other scenario is you got all this gold, and now how do you liquidate it? How do you liquefy it? Are you gonna go to a pawn shop? You're gonna go, where are you going? You're going to the bank? Is the banks even gonna exist? Where do you go? Like, that's, I look at gold. I'm like, what do you get? You're going to shave a little bit off to get a loaf of bread? You're going to hand him a $2,000 gold coin for for a loaf of bread? Like, it's just way too impractical. I just, that's my take on gold. And in the stock market, I just don't trust. It's not real money. It's not real anything. The whole thing, once it started getting into hedge funds and futures and all that, I'm like, you know what? Like this has become like a monopoly game, in there. I don't want to touch it. So that's my thing, real estate, without killing everybody with that, with the rest of that. Thank you, Bob. I I don't know. Hopefully it's not luck, but I appreciate the well wishes for sure. For sure. Man, Jerry, you be writing these essays, brother. I'm going to have to skip on this one because I'm on my way out. But save it for the next one. I'll be on every week. For those that didn't catch the ticker for the intro, I am going to be clipping it off of this. So it's going to be posted as a separate video. So you can catch it there. So if you want to share those quotes from Alexandr Solzhenitsyn and Yuri and Ayn Rand, they will be all put together in one clip. So I did, for those who are catching this late, I did show them throughout the show as well. So they're in both places. They're just broken up on the broadcast. They'll be all together on the separate post. All right. So on that note, folks, I wish everybody the best. I will be dialing out, and wait, there we go. I'll be dialing out. Live free, folks. I will see you. Make sure you follow, subscribe, like, share, the whole nine. All right? I'm out.
And like that,